Hello. When I was leaving the Watchtower in the 1980s, this was a book that had a big influence on me, The Meaning of the City by Jacques Ellul. I hadn't heard of Ellul till I saw this book and his other book, which was more famous at that time, Propaganda. We've already made a video about propaganda, and also one of his other books, The Subversion of Christianity. I'll put links on the end of the video to those. But this book had an extraordinary influence on me because I thought, here's a great thinker. I wish we had some thinkers in the Watchtower like this guy. I can see from the back of the book that I purchased it in May of 1985. And in the next 3 years, I thought my way out of the Watchtower. Ellul helped me a lot. Here's what the back of the book says about this man. Jacques Ellul, a member of the law faculty at the University of Bordeaux, is increasingly being recognized as a brilliant and penetrating commentator on the relationship between theology and sociology. In The Meaning of the City, he presents what he finds in the Bible, a sophisticated, coherent theology of the city fully applicable to today's urbanized society. Ellul believes that the city symbolizes the supreme work of man, and as such represents man's ultimate rejection of God. Therefore it is the city where lies man's rebellious heart that must be reformed. The author stresses the fact that the Bible does not find man's fulfillment in a return to an idyllic Eden, but points rather to a life of communion with the Savior in the city transfigured. The meaning of the city, says John Wilkinson in his introductory essay to the book, is the theological counterpoint to Ellul's Technological Society, a work that analyzed the phenomenon of the autonomous and totally manipulative post-industrial world. Ellul takes issue with those who idealistically plan new urban environments for man, as though man alone can negate the inherent diabolism of the city. For Ellul, the history of the city from the times of Cain and Nimrod through to Babylon and Jerusalem reveals a tendency to destroy the human being for the sake of human works. Nevertheless, continuing the theme of the tension between two realities that characterizes all his works, Ellul sees God as electing the city as itself an instrument of grace for the believer. And the Christian Century comments on this book, a powerful sermon that should be heeded by all advocates of the secular city, by all Marxist utopians, by all development enthusiasts, and by all modernization personnel who believe that when man has solved the technological problems, the ethical, theological problem has disappeared. And the Journal of the American Scientific Affiliation says this: Ellul is not just another social critic. He may well be the first to have developed the kind of theory of social problems which transcends the contemporary scene. Such analysis is not only descriptive of the past, but leads to a prophecy of the future. I'll read you a sample from the beginning of the book where he discusses the first builder of a city in the Bible. That's, of course, Cain. The tragedy of Cain is the subhead he gives, the human condition. And so Cain went away from God's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. The three things are identical. The land of Nod is a literal translation of the Hebrew, the land of wandering. But why make into a proper name what is not? The irony of our text, Cain living in the land of wandering. Someone will say that such an irony could not come from a Hebrew writer of that time. Let us not be so sure. Neither should we be so sure that it does not express God's irony. But is it really irony? And is this phrase not rather an expression of how incurably precarious Cain's situation is? This Cain who wants a home and can have none, who is forever the man going somewhere, but where? The seed of all man's questings is to be found in Cain's life in the land of wandering, always searching for a place where his need for security might be satisfied. But the only place he finds is that very country characterized by being uninhabitable. And the ancient story means the very same thing when it speaks of the east of Eden. The east, the country where the sun rises, the point of departure. But one does not stay in a starting place, one leaves it. And now Cain is forever fixed at this starting place. His eye and its desire must always wander after the land where he will direct his steps. But he can never finish his journey, for he lives at the point of departure. The east has an exact meaning in the scriptures. It is both the road man takes in his futile search for eternity and the one he takes when he obeys God's call. These two great ways are parallel and show the relationship between the different attitudes of the human race. On the one hand, those who wanted to build Babel came from the east, just as did the marauders who throughout history oppressed God's people. But on the other hand, Abraham also came from the east, as do all those whom God calls. Moses and the Levites stood on the east side of the altar. The wise men came from the east. This long history is in reality a prophecy of the great arrival, and he has the great arrival in capitals, from the east, which will accomplish all that man is awaiting, all that he has been awaiting since Cain settled in his symbolic east. And by the great arrival, of course, he's probably alluding to Malachi 4, where the Son of Righteousness arises with healing in his wings. That's the last great messianic prophecy of our English Bible. So I'll link to those videos I mentioned at first, Ellul on propaganda and Ellul on the subversion of Christianity. And strongly advocate that everybody make this part of their basic Christian library. The Meaning of the City by Jacques Ellul.